The history of looking for patterns in language started with Jean-Baptiste Estoupe roughly a century ago. His quantitative observations concerning language were popularized, expanded on, and explained by George Kingsley Zipf not much later. Today, Zipfians have reported over 300 quantitative regularities in quantitative characteristics of linguistic corpuses. In this presentation, however, I shall focus on the other explanatory way of doing science, the scientific method. In linguistics, this approach, as just mentioned, was first taken by Zipf, but was not followed by others until very recently. In this part of the presentation, it will be illustrated how language can be studied with the scientific method, in the paradigm of empirical sciences, that is. So, first we will choose a linguistic observation to account for. This is going to be the ordering of semantic categories of adjectives in noun phrases consisting of two or more adjectives and a noun, such as a beautiful dark Turkish carpet. If a noun is preceded by adjectives expressing the semantic categories of opinion, size, shape, age, color, nationality, and material, starting from left to right, speakers place the adjectives representing opinion and size first, shape, age, and color second, and nationality and material third. So, for instance, the English say a beautiful blue Turkish jewel, but not a Turkish blue beautiful jewel. To explain why the ordering of adjectives just described is favored, first let me introduce two linguistic theories, one that models the process of categorization, the other that describes the mechanism of linguistic self-organization and self-regulation. So, on to theory one. Categorization in natural language takes place with the help of two mechanisms, encoding and selecting out of communicative field, that is, expectations and associations coming to one's mind during the processing of language. Encoding means representing categories the Aristotelian way, that is, with sets of features shared by all and only that category members. Selection takes place by choosing the best matching item out of the given set of items coming to one's mind during the interpretation process. Selection may be direct or relational. Selection takes place directly when a given encoded category representation is used to select from a given set of options the one that resembles the encoded item used for selection more than any of the remaining items in that set does. For instance, when talking about flowers, the flower selected with the term bluebell is more like a bell and blue than any other flower is. Relationally, we select such an item among the given set of items that come to one's mind at a given moment when speaking or listening, that the position of that item among the remaining items in that set of items is like the position of the encoding lexeme used to select with between the set of other encoded items which are typically also used on similar occasions. So, for instance, when selecting relationally, we identify the foot of the mountain as that part of the mountain that is in such a relation to the remaining parts of the mountain as the foot is in relation to body parts. Now on to theory 2. Theory 2. Language is a self-organizing and self-regulating system, the result of economization process taking place during verbal social interactions in linguistic communities. In other words, more efficient language varieties are favored, though not necessarily consciously, by a given language community. A more efficient variety of a language can be the one which is easier to acquire, requires less effort to produce, allows to communicate fast, with adequate precision, etc. For instance, it has been observed that forms which are highly predictable tend to be shortened with time. This is so because since it turned out that the shortened versions of these lexemes did not lead to confusion, yet they were easier to acquire and required less effort to pronounce, therefore more and more people started to remember them and were willing to imitate these variants, which required less effort. Now let me account for the order of adjectives in noun phrases mentioned earlier qualitatively, that is in a natural language, with the help of the theories just presented. In a nutshell, the order mentioned is favored because language with such an ordering of adjectives allows one to communicate more efficiently, precisely faster, than a language with random ordering of adjectives would. Before accounting for that hypothesis in more detail, that is, before explaining why such ordering results in a more efficient language variety, note the following. Adjectives can be used in three basic ways: descriptively, directly selectively, and relationally selectively. Descriptively, adjectives serve to assign a value to the parameter of an item characterized by that parameter without influencing the values of the remaining parameters. For instance, a red ball differs from a blue ball in color, but in no other aspect. In other words, the word red has been used here encodingly and informs of nothing more about the ball except its color. When adjectives operate in a directly selective way, they select a subcategory of items which differs by a number of parameters from the original category, constituting a separate class of items. For instance, evergreen trees are not merely trees that are evergreen, but differ from other trees with the shape of needles, the shape of the tree itself, geographical location they favor, birds that nest in them, etc. A high chair, on the other hand, is not only high but has some additional features making it safe and comfortable for children. Used in a relationally selective way, an adjective points out the place on the scale of possible values of a given parameter characterizing members of a specific category. For instance, the adjective big, when used in the phrase a big virus, states that we mean the virus which is one of the biggest among viruses. When used in the phrase a big star, it states we mean one of the biggest among the stars. Qualitative conclusion. In view of the above, it is clear that for the adjective which is used in a relationally selective, that is gradable way, it is essential that the range of the parameter that the adjective assesses be specified first. Thus, a relationally selecting adjective, that is a gradable adjective, the adjective is gradably, needs to be applied last chronologically. In most languages, that means it must be placed the farthest from the noun. While directly selecting, that is categorizing adjectives, must operate first, be placed the closest to the noun. This leaves the middle position as the best place for the remaining adjectives, that is the ones used descriptively, which are neither strongly relationally selective, gradable, nor strongly directly selective, categorizing. Otherwise, we may end up having to re-evaluate the actual value already established. Think, for instance, of a wooden long bridge and a long wooden bridge. In the latter case, length is established in relation to wooden bridges, which tend to be shorter than steel bridges. In the former case, we look for long bridges out of all bridges, which assessment is less precise.